Speaker, under this costly Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession, and in the past few days we've learned so much more about the dire state of our economy under his watch. While the cost of living skyrockets, our economy has shrunk for 2 quarters straight, businesses are fleeing, capital investment has plunged for 5 consecutive quarters, and Scotiabank warns our growth is less than half that of the U.S. So will the Prime Minister finally admit his policies caused this Liberal recession, or is he so out of touch that he thinks that Canadians are just imagining their economic despair?
Hear, hear.
Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to remind my opposition colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador that employment numbers are up in our province. And I also want to remind her once again of the almost $1 billion in small craft harbours, growing our rural, coastal, Indigenous communities that support our fisheries, essential part of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, let me tell you. Then there's also the supports around housing, road construction, infrastructure, community centres, on and on this goes. We are actually in a time of growth. I hope this member gets on board.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, clearly Liberal photo ops and empty Liberal announcements will not pay the mortgages of struggling Canadians.
Right.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer just confirmed that there is less than a 1% chance that this Liberal government hits its own deficit targets. They are already borrowing $7 billion more than they admitted, while driving up bloated bureaucracy to $86 billion. The broad economic picture is getting worse, not better. So will the Liberal Prime Minister tell us, are we in a recession, or are Canadians just technically doing worse after a decade of Liberals being in power?
The Honourable Minister.
Member opposite that when we get people to work, when we invest in our young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and Canadians with programs like the apprenticeship program that walks with them throughout the journey to a Red Seal designation, when we have construction, it's jobs, it enhances our economy, it raises our employment numbers, which we are now seeing. This is what it takes to build Canada strong. Empty slogans and just negative responses are not helpful. I invite that member to work alongside us.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Under this Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession. There's been no answer to why our government has failed us and brought us into a recession. First, it was a technical recession, but when Canadians pushed back, it became tariffs. But when that didn't stick, it became not enough spending and not enough immigration. What? When Canadians have to steal $10 billion worth of groceries because of affordability, is it because they're only technically hungry?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, we're seeing rents come down across Canada right now. We're seeing 20 straight months of rents declining, which is a positive trend. We're investing in the affordable housing that Canada needs to make sure that Canadians can afford housing. We're investing in the discounts and rebates that groceries and essentials benefit, and it benefits to children, food programs across the board. This side of the House votes for affordability, that side of the House votes against it.
Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have hope that one day this government will actually answer questions and take accountability, but it seems as though today's not that day. When it broke that Canada is in a recession, my very first thought was, when is this government going to ask for another blank check? They already are borrowing over their budget. The spring economic update said they would borrow $65 billion this year. However, the budget watchdog says it's going to be $72 billion. I'd like to know just how much this Prime Minister will tell Canadians it's going to take to fix it.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we're making unprecedented investments in Canada's community infrastructure. $51 billion in the Build Community Strong Fund that is going into our communities, for community centres, for housing enabling infrastructure, for public transit. These are unprecedented investments to make Canada more affordable and to get jobs on the ground across Canada for our young people. 100,000 new tradespeople that will be trained, supported by this House again. The other side of the House doesn't support any of this action. They're just negative. Get with the program.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession. The economy has shrunk in 2 consecutive quarters. Per capita, GDP is only up 1.5% over 7 years, and labour productivity has declined for 4 years straight. Mr. Speaker, even the Parliamentary Budget Officer said there is less than 1% chance that the government meets its fiscal anchor. Will the Prime Minister tell us if we are in a recession, or are Canadians only technically doing worse after a decade of Liberal rule?
Great question.
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, British Columbians are talking to me about the fact that they see that we are facing headwinds for our economy right now. They see the U.S. charging tariffs that haven't been seen since the Great Depression. And they see the work that we're doing to invest in labor, to invest in good jobs for individuals, and they see the employment numbers coming up. Mr. Speaker, British Columbians are optimistic, and they want us to continue the work we're doing.
The honourable member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is Liberals cause the economic headwinds.
That's right.
The fact is that the Liberal Prime Minister is the only Prime Minister that is running this country that is in a recession. Period. Canadian banks are now warning of economic decline, with Scotiabank forecasting just 0.8% growth for Canada compared to the 1.9% in the United States, while BMO projects even weaker growth with 0.5% in 2026. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, but the Liberals are already borrowing billions of dollars over their projected costly budget. Now, will this Prime Minister finally admit that Canada is technically in a real recession?
That's right. Good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, British Columbians see that we are facing headwinds caused by geopolitical events and
right.
tariffs. The U.S. has fundamentally changed its approach to trade, raising tariffs to levels that haven't been seen since the Great Depression. Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to see the steps that we're taking to address this. They want to see the diversification of trade. They want to see us invest in major projects, and they want to see us invest in Canadian workers. Why can't our colleagues join with us to make these investments?
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession, and he has zero respect for the sacrifices Canadians are making every day. Families, we know families are cutting back, businesses are delaying investment, productivity is falling. A former central banker is driving the economy, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer appointed by him is saying there's a 99% chance he's going to drive this into a ditch. Will the Prime Minister admit Canada is in a recession, or does he believe Canadians are better off after 10 years of Liberal rule?
Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Instead of gleefully running down the economy, which the opposition does every day, they should help us build it up. They don't like to point out that 88,000 new jobs were created in the May report. They don't like to point out that wages have grown faster than inflation every month since we took office. They don't like to point out rents are down 9%. And in Windsor, when we invest in central stamping, when we invest in unique tool and gauge, which we've done, guess what happens, Mr. Speaker? They oppose investing in their own communities. They should get with the program and build this country up together.
A few facts, Mr. Speaker. Under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country to fall into recession. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has just lowered her growth forecasts. RBC, TD and BMO have revised their outlooks downwards. Canadians are seeing their standard of living decline. Yet, the Prime Minister still refuses to utter the word recession. So I'm going to ask him a simple question once again. Are we in a recession, or are Canadians simply just becoming technically poorer after a Liberal decade? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The OECD forecasts Canada having the second highest growth in the G7 countries. Foreign direct investments over the last year are double our peers in the G7. The facts are there. For 33 months, salaries have gone up higher than inflation. The Conservatives don't like listening to good news for the economy, but last month we've created 88,000 jobs in Canada because the Canadian economy is much more resilient, Mr. Speaker, and it's resilient thanks to the efforts of this government. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Mégantic, l'Érable, l'Aude-Binière. Another statistic, 45,000 Canadians have lost their jobs compared to last month. The Parliamentary Budget Officer, Mr. Speaker, has just demolished the Liberal Prime Minister's economic narrative. Weaker growth, higher deficits, falling productivity. The only G20 country in a recession. Worse still, the PBO concludes that the government has a 99% chance of missing its own budget target. How does the Liberal Prime Minister, who presents himself as a great economist, describes this as an economy that is shrinking? Or how would he describe an economy that is shrinking, Canadians who are becoming poorer, and a government that has a 99% chance of missing its own budget target? Canadians are calling it a recession. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I understand that any face wind makes the Conservatives happy, but on this side of the House, we wake up and figure out what we can do, irrespective of what's happening outside, irrespective of the illegal and unjust tariff war. What can we do to build Canada's economy? You know what? With Nouveau Monde, we have the biggest graphite mine in the G7. We have the high-speed train project, 150 Airbus aircrafts, 88,000 jobs created last month. That's what we're up to on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthur Basker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a little reminder. The best years were under the Conservatives for the country. Weaker growth and higher deficits. That is the alarming assessment of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. The result? Per capita GDP growth in Canada remains among the lowest in the G20. The Canadian economy has contracted over the last 2 quarters. Under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in recession. A very simple multiple choice question for the Prime Minister. Has Canada entered either A, a recession, or B, a technical recession? The Honourable Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are focused on economic growth and we are working hard on the matter. Our plan is working. Youth unemployment is declining by around 1%, which means 22,000 jobs for our youth. What's more, we're investing $6 billion in specialised jobs to recruit, hire and train 100,000 youth. We are building a strong Canada on this side of the House for everyone.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Alaska. Mr. Speaker, with all respect, we were asking if we're in a recession, a technical recession, and we're still not getting an answer. If you want to solve a problem, you have to acknowledge that that problem exists, yet the Liberals still refuse to admit that Canada is the only G20 country in a recession. According to the PBO, the Liberals will add $318 billion to the national debt by 2031, assuming no new measures are implemented. We understand the Liberal credit card truly has no limit. Will the government finally put an end to the financial mismanagement that's plunged Canada, unfortunately, into a recession? The Honourable Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government has a plan to transform the fundamentals of our economy, to make it more resilient and to create tens of thousands of jobs, like in Darlington and Contrecoeur. We are investing in hospitals, in community centres, in public transit, affordable housing. We're creating the conditions for long-term prosperity, and we're building Canada strong from coast to coast to coast. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession. The Parliamentary Budget Officer's report confirms that the deficit could reach $72 billion in 2026. Meanwhile, Canada's purchasing power has been stagnating since 2015. That means groceries are more expensive, mortgages are more expensive, gas is more expensive. Are those technical bills, or will the Prime Minister admit that Canada is in a recession? The Honourable Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since this summer, we have created over 165,000 jobs in Canada, Mr. Speaker. 88,000 jobs just in the month of May. Mr. Speaker, if we look, for example, at the United States, we see that Canada is creating jobs almost twice as fast as the United States per capita. And it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, to see that so many Canadians see optimism and positivity for the future, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Canada is the only G20 country in a recession, and the state of the economy is dire. The economy has shrunk 3 out of the last 4 quarters. Per capita GDP shows annualized growth of only 0.2% per year over the last 7 years. Capital investment has declined for 5 quarters in a row, and bankruptcies have hit rates not seen since 2009. At what point do the Liberals stop calling these technicalities and start admitting that Canadians were promised growth and fiscal responsibility, but got a recession instead?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Speaker, it's times like this that remind me of the famous pragmatic philosopher William James, who famously said, "Pessimism leads to weakness, optimism to power." Perhaps there's no quote that could greater explain the misfortunes of the Conservative Party of Canada in this House. But let's be honest, despite the headwinds, there's much to be optimistic about in the Canadian economy. 1.5% in consumer spending. Wages outpacing inflation every month this government has been in power, and 88,000 jobs in May. That's 800%.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
If denial could grow the economy, we will certainly be leading in the G20, Mr. Speaker. Canada is in a recession. Scotiabank's forecast growth of just 0.8%, BMO 0.5% for this year. The Bank of Canada warns that 1 in 10 homeowners in Toronto might not be able to renew their mortgages. While the Liberals may try to dismiss this recession, Canadians cannot ignore losing their jobs, their businesses, or delaying retirement. Will the Prime Minister acknowledge this recessionary conditions Canadians are facing are real, or are those just technicalities too?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Speaker, I want Canadians to realize what Conservatives choose to spend their time on in a time of great anxiety and uncertainty. They choose to amplify bad news in our economy. They choose to be pessimistic at a time that Canadians need optimism. Canadians need a government that lifts them up. That's what our government is doing by investing in 12 million Canadians with the groceries and essentials benefit, with celebrating 88,000 new jobs in the Canadian economy, 800% exceeding expectation. That's the kind of government Canadians deserve. They deserve much better.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession, and in the past few days, we've learned much more about how dire the state of our economy is under his watch. On Saturday night, in a Lake Cowichan pub, workers told me their biggest worry was affording groceries. But the Liberals' recycled grocery stunt cuts off at only $59,000 for a couple, meaning full-time workers are shut out. The Prime Minister laughed at suffering Canadians in this House last week. Will he stop laughing and start caring so Canadians can afford to eat? Good job.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve facts, not conservative fear. Labeling the economy without context doesn't help workers or businesses. The Bank of Canada has in fact cautioned against doing that. Economies around the world are facing global uncertainty, but Canada is weathering these global headwinds better than many peers. Our economy is stable, jobs are being created, and we continue to support Canadians through these headwinds. We will remain focused on affordability, economic growth, and supporting jobs, while the Conservatives remain focused on fear-mongering.
The Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada is the only G20 country in a recession. Economy has shrunk for 2 straight quarters and 3 of the last 4 quarters. Productivity is declining, businesses are struggling, families are working hard and unable to get ahead. Young people feel locked out of jobs, housing, and starting a family. Canada's economy is getting worse, not better. Will the Prime Minister tell us if we are in a recession, or does he believe Canadians are only technically struggling to pay their bills?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. You know, it seems that the Conservative photocopier is out of toner today because they've all received the exact same photocopy, the exact same question. It's too bad the Conservative leader doesn't trust his MPs asking an original question, perhaps about their local businesses or something that's happening in their own province, but it's the same question over and over again. We've got to stick to the facts here, Mr. Speaker. Canada's economy is growing. In fact, Canada has surpassed the U.S. when it comes to having a higher employment rate. The Canadian economy, because Canadians are working hard, added 88,000 jobs to the economy in the last month. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan, and we're working hard to make sure Canadians are getting ahead.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada has become the only country in the G27 in a recession. Businesses are no longer investing in Canada. Even the banks have lost faith. Scotiabank and BMO projecting growth at less than half of the United States. The first step to fixing any problem is admitting there is one. Will the Liberal Prime Minister admit to Canadians that we are in a recession, or will he continue telling them that they're only technically suffering after a decade of Liberal rule?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague from Alberta on the Conservative benches must have missed the latest job numbers for our province. Employment in Alberta is up 104,000 compared to this time last year, the strongest year-over-year job growth of any province. This is thanks to resilient Alberta workers and business who are building, hiring, investing, and help drive Canada's economy forward. Conservatives from Alberta should stop talking down their own constituents and acknowledge the work they're doing to build a better economy.